Hey and welcome. I'm Justin, fish tank beginner, and it's that tank life. So I wanted to be a first-time tank owner, and I thought it'd be a good idea just to record the process as I go. As a first-time fish keeper, not quite fish yet, but plant keeper, fish tank owner, just in general, I wanted to record the process as I go and all the mistakes I make and the things that I do wrong. Well, I just wanted to make sure that I take everyone along for the journey. First thing I set out to do was just get a little knowledge, so I watched a few videos, a few YouTubes to make sure that I was being a responsible fish owner. So I learned that I needed to cycle my tank. There's a couple things that I need to do before I actually get fish. So at this here point, I decided that I actually wanted to grow plants more than have the fish. So I did a little bit of research and I learned that plants don't need near as much care as the fish do for like the water parameters and stuff. So this is my first tank, and what I'm going to do is just plant some Vallisneria and see how it goes. For the dirt, I actually just went into my garden and grabbed a couple shovelfuls of black earth. I had it dumped all over the garden from the first of the year, and what I'm doing is just using it. Now, there is a few things that I will note, you probably will notice them as you go, of things that I did wrong. Like maybe there's a few things in the dirt I should have cleaned out of the dirt. Well, this is where my first mistakes will start, and let's just go along. I gotta do a little bit of filling up and stick around and see how it goes. Now, one of the reasons why I ended up using just some dirt from the garden is because my plants landed early before I got my substrate. So I ordered some stratum and some Amazonian dirt and stuff like that so that I could have my tank proper. But what happened was my plants landed so much faster and my stuff wasn't expected for another week. So what I did was I rushed it to the garden and just grabbed some dirt. I needed to get this Vallisneria in something as quick as I could because I don't want it to die. I don't want much die off. I want to be able to plant it. And well, I was in a hurry, so I just kind of did it lazy. That might not have been the best way to do it, but that's the way I was doing it. So that's something maybe to take note of if you're ordering things to do things in a maybe a different order than ordering your fish and plants before your tank has 30 days to cycle. Now, what I'm doing is I'm just making a quarantine. I knew that I was waiting for stuff. So this tank is a quarantine. So I'm not going to dip my Vallisneria in stuff to clean snails or anything like that off. I'm just going to put it in this here tank and they're going to be the only thing in it. There's going to be absolutely no fish in this here tank for 90 days. I don't plan to have anything in here living unless something sporadically comes up out of that dirt and lives in here. If it survives, I'm going to leave it, but this is pretty much just an ecosystem for the Vallisneria to get started. I don't want to damage it too much, and I just want to get it started. To plant the Vallisneria, we're just going to plug it into the dirt. We just want to go and kind of put it in knuckle deep and then pull it out a little bit slowly, pack the dirt around it, or it's going to float. I actually end up having a couple of ones that float away on me a few times. Now, to prevent that, I would probably have used something a little different. I should have used gravel, and later on as this tank evolves, I do learn a couple of little tricks, and it goes through quite the evolution from here till where we are now. The first thing I learned was actually to make sure that I buy gravel, dirt, and make sure that all my supplies lands before actually ordering fish or plants. Luckily, I knew not to get fish within my first couple of days of setting up a tank. I don't have another tank. I don't have a filter. I don't have a friend with a fish that I could have borrowed some media from to like help cycle the tank. So I knew I was going to have to cycle this tank from brand spanking new, and I knew this was going to take quite some time and quite a bit of work and effort. It does take a little bit longer if you don't have a tank to get one going. But I'm glad I went with plants and not fish because this would have actually been fairly stressful on the fish. Where my first couple of weeks I ended up having to do many, many, many water changes. This water actually had wood chips in it and a lot of debris and a lot of ammonia spikes happened. And the second thing would have been to cap your dirt properly. If you're going to use dirt in your substrate, which is perfectly fine, it's great stuff to use. I actually love using it. I still have it in my tank. I use it like it grows plants great, but for your fish to not have it capped, it's going to leak a lot of stuff into your water column, a lot of nutrients and a lot of ammonia. It's going to have spikes like crazy, depending on the dirt you have. See, I had manure and it had wood chips and it had a lot of stuff, so the tannins in the water ended up making my water super dark, and there was a lot of other problems that I ended up having later on because that I did not cap my substrate. What I suggest though, if you're going to cap your substrate, is make sure that you have it in a tank that you're not going to gravel vacuum. Use a fairly thick about an inch of gravel or sand to cap it. Sand will probably work better, and then put the gravel over top of it just to stop anything from leaking into the substrate. Now, these are things that are just whatever works best for you. But these are things that I am taking note to try later on to make sure that some of the mistakes that I made don't happen again. Because this year caused me quite a bit of problem until I learned I need to cap it. And actually capping the dirt with just a little bit of gravel helped me so much. Not just for the stuff leaking from the soil into the substrate, into the that was in the substrate leaking into the water, but also with the color of the water. Capping the substrate and stopping it leaking all the wood fiber and stuff like that into the water helped the color. And it made it so much easier to plant because it actually held the roots down, where I had a lot of problems with floating plants at first, and it was very inconvenient. And as you can see already, and since I've been recording, that there's a lot of different matter in the water, a lot of living things, and a lot of things that are going to break down and become organic matter and cause things like nitrogen, a lot of ammonia, and a few other spikes and different things that I had. I did end up having a little bit of potassium deficiency for some reason. I noticed a lot of people don't have that problem because they're feeding fish, and it has everything that you need for phosphates and stuff in it. But that was one thing to note, that there was a little bit of deficiencies here and there, but not very many. It was mostly just I had way too much organic material breaking down in the water, and it would tan it brown. And you'll see it later on at the very end. I'll have a couple of clips of what happened a few weeks after this here. It's looking really good right now, and we're just adding a little bit more water. It doesn't matter what, it can be cold water, it doesn't matter. Vallisneria is a pretty tough plant, and so far I've found it very rigid. Actually, it lasts through quite a bit, and it can take quite a bit of different parameters. I had my tank go absolutely stagnant, and as you can see, all these here worms, they do cause me that problem later on where my tank goes a little bit, like, don't leave your dead fish in your tank, guys. A little bit of advice, don't leave dead things in your tank. It was an absolute disaster what happened. I'm just going to finish filling it up and play a little bit of music while I go along. Now I'm just going to add a few house plants that I had kicking around. I was propagating these by a cup of water, so I thought they'd be okay to put in the aquarium to absorb up some of the excess nutrients, which I think was a good idea. Hindsight, I shouldn't have left that one so far under the water. They're not actually submersible plants, and they will die. So definitely keep that in mind when you're adding things to your aquarium. I'm just going to clean a little bit of the excess dirt away from the top here, and that'll be just about it for me. I'm just going to wipe a little bit of the edges and clean a little bit of the stuff of the inside. Now, it'd probably be best to add a filter at this here time, but that was one of the problems I had, is I did not have my filter yet. It didn't land in the mail, and there's no store close enough for me to go grab one right quick. So that was something I did run into for a problem. So I ended up running this here with no filter for at least the first full week. Nothing crazy bad happened, but it did cause me a few inconveniences not having the water moving and stuff like that. But so far, this is what it looks like, and it's looking pretty good. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. The bubbles are in the way and it's hard to see. My background isn't all the greatest, but there is still a lot of live matter in here and a lot of bugs, a lot of worms and stuff like that. Hindsight, I would have taken them out, and well, you'll see why here in just a minute. By about day 5, my water turned this here awful shade of color. As you can see here, it browned up quite a bit and started to look awful. I also added my filter in the mail and ended up adding it to the tank a little bit early to hopefully help combat this problem. Now this didn't seem to affect my Vallisneria any, and what I ended up doing was I did a few 50% water changes, which seemed to work quite well. So after a 50% water change, I could actually see in the water quite a bit, and it was quite a bit nicer. It was quite a bit clearer, and I could see that my Vallisneria was growing like crazy. This was great, but I ended up having to do this all the time. This was the next day. So that's ended up what it looked like, and that was very inconvenient, so I ended up having to do water changes for a 50% for 2 full weeks before this here ended up stopping. I did make sure to test my tank a few times to make sure that things were correct, and I did notice that I had no nitrates or nitrate in my tank, which was really good, and this was showing up pretty good. I ended up finding a snail, and so that I gave him some food, and let's just say it went from there. It got a little out of hand, and I fed it all. It was kind of just a joke at the time, and it was for some funny content. I thought it would be good for a couple of clips, but this actually caused me some problems later on. After I cleared that out, though, the tank looked quite a bit better. And what it looks like today? Well, it looks like this. I added a little bit of gravel, a few stones in here to hold the plants down, and the water cleared up quite a bit. But I will be updating this quite a bit in the future and my struggles with it as I go. If you want to follow along, definitely hit the subscribe button, follow for more content. I will be pushing this here out as I learn. But again, I am a very new fish keeper. I have never had a tank before, so there's going to be lots of mistakes and lots of learning. But that's it for this one here. In the next one, we're actually going to upgrade this here on a big time scale. New filter, new gravel, new dirt, and, well, stay tuned for that one. I hope to catch you. If you see anything that I did wrong, point out some things, definitely. Like I said, I'm very new to this here. So if you see something I did wrong, definitely leave it down in the description below. Let's have a talk about it. I'm just learning, so anything new I could learn about my tank, it'll be great. I'm always open to suggestions as well, so definitely, if you have anything to talk about at all, definitely leave it down in the description below. Again, don't be too critical on my fish tank. There's no living things in it yet. Well, there was, but not on purpose. But I'm going to leave it with that one there, and that's it for this one here. I hope to catch you in the next one. Peace out.